Taking a look at West Africa, a few months ago we reviewed a chapter in the history of Weta. I also touched on the ongoing Biafra and Amba crises in the recent Apolitical World Map update. Today we'll look back at a crisis I discussed in a previous map update, the Western Togoland Revolt of 2020. Let's briefly recap the history of the Transvolta region, starting at the time when we began our look at Weta, 1721. At that time, just as the first forts were being established by the great powers in Weta, just to the west in the Popos and the Gold Coast, they had established long strings of coastal fortifications and had placed many of the coastal native kingdoms under their protection. These ventures were still exploratory, and most of these coastal enclaves were under the control of chartered companies, except for the Prussian one, which had been made a Prussian crown colony in 1711, but which at this point was in the process of dissolution and conquest from the east by the Dutch, specifically focusing back on the Transvolta, a region comprised of people speaking Awe languages, similar to that of areas to the south and east, including Little Popo. The area remained at this time under the control of local powers, and was a border area between the kingdoms of Togo Bay, Dahomey, and Ashanti. Dahomey, of course, has a fascinating history, some of which I touched on in the video about Weta. Ashanti also has a very notable history, including several major wars against the British. It would be the returning Prussian Germans who would be the first great power to influence the Transvolta. In the first week of February 1884, the Prussian-German imperial warship Sophie landed at the town of Anejo, or Little Popo, the center of a small local kingdom, and coerced the king to sign a treaty of German protection. At this point, the British were now in control of all of the western areas as part of the British Gold Coast. 5 months later, German explorer Gustav Nachtigal engaged in similar tactics at the town of Bagida to the west. He also signed a treaty of German protection with the town, which had previously been under the influence of Togo Bay, another town to the east that sat between the two new German protectorates, which on the 5th were officially declared as the Protectorate of Togo, or Togoland, with Nachtigal named as the territory's realm commissar. In its early years, the capital would switch off between Bagida and Little Popo, but by 1904 the capital was in Lomé, which is the present-day Togolese capital. At this point, both Lomé and the Transvolta region were Awe-speaking regions of German influence, and it seemed that if the Germans ever left, they would remain as a united unit. And indeed, the homogeneity was a factor in German Togoland becoming known around the world as a, quote, model colony. However, historical events would intervene, eventually leading to many of the issues we saw in the 2020 revolt. A decade later, in 1914, World War I had broken out in Europe. Just days after declarations of war had been made official, it became clear that colonies would be involved in the conflicts, as they had been in past global great power wars like the 7 Years' War and the Napoleonic Wars. However, as part of the 1884-85 Berlin Conference on Africa, the great powers agreed that in the case of war between each other, they would not engage in colonial warfare, at least in Africa. In the initial days of the war, the Germans in Togoland held out hope that this would be the case, as they had only a local colonial police force and no military garrisons in the country. The British invaded from the Gold Coast to the west, while French West Africa surrounded German Togoland to the north and east, with Dahomey and Weta serving as the home base for French operations into Togo. By the 26th, the British had captured Lomé, and they and the French were bearing down on the Germans at the river Kra. The Germans had hastily assembled police troops and dug trenches. However, they later retreated and destroyed all of their radio towers and other useful equipment before surrendering. As the British rushed troops north, they came into control of the Transvolta region. Just under 2 years later, December 27, 1916, the division of the former German colony by the respective British and French military administrations was formalized as a border was set. The French ended up taking over Lomé, while the rest of the Awe-speaking Lower Transvolta remained British. In July of 1922, these divisions were officially sanctioned by the new League of Nations, which approved of the British and French administrative zones becoming League of Nations mandate territories. The French side was administered from the French West Africa colony, but as a League of Nations mandate, Togo Togoland remained officially separate. The British side was administered from the Gold Coast, just as neighboring Ashanti and the Northern Territories. On December 13, 1946, after the dissolution of the League of Nations, the new United Nations took over stewardship of the Mandate Territories, renaming them Trust Territories. By 1956, the British and French were focusing their attention on numerous crises elsewhere. On May 9th, a major plebiscite was held in British Togoland. It was clearly not a viable option for the territory to become an independent state of its own, given the extensive resource and logistical necessities of statehood by 1956. Thus, two alternative options were presented. The first would be to join the new independent Commonwealth realm of Ghana, which was set to be formed the following year out of the combined dominions of the Gold Coast and Ashanti. The second option would be to remain a British-administered UN trust territory until such time that the future of French Togoland became more clear. However, the results were split along geographic lines, with the Gur-speaking North voting to join the Gold Coast and future Ghana, and the minority speakers prevalent in the North also voting for unification with Ghana. Meanwhile, the Ewe-speaking South in the Trans-Volta region voted to retain British trusteeship with the long-term goal of joining French Togoland once it gained its independence. Even this scenario came with potential problems, though, as evidenced by the ongoing Anglophone-Francophone conflict in Cameroon. However, the difference here would be the ethnic and linguistic unity of the Ewe people, though of course the northern regions of both British and French Togoland were dominated by non-Ewe groups. However, overall, 58% of the vote went to integration with the emerging Ghana. This meant that on December 13th, when the referendum results went into effect, the entire territory was integrated into the British Gold Coast, and on March 6th became part of the new independent Ghana. Suddenly, the Ewe population of the Trans-Volta was a far-flung minority on the periphery of the new state. Meanwhile, just over 3 years later, the majority Ewe-speaking French Togoland became independent. The new Togolese government had claims on Western Togoland, while Ghana, already in control of Western Togoland, sought the potential integration of the Togolese Republic as well. However, despite getting off to a rocky start, in recent years the two governments have gotten along better, largely owing to the domination of the Togo government by northern forces, comprised of non-Ewe groups, who therefore oppose the Ewe integration that would come from a Western Togoland union. The conflict thus died down until it re-emerged in 2017. That year, a non-violent independence group, the Western Togoland Homeland Study Group, led by Charles Kajorji, popularly known as Papavi, unilaterally declared Western Togoland independence and were later arrested for treason after holding public demonstrations of their declaration. However, they were released, and it appears that this may have all been a publicity stunt, with the non-violent group never expecting to actually get independence, but merely looking to bring attention to their cause internationally. One of the main points brought up by the Homeland Study Group is to question the wording of the 1956 referendum and whether it was termed union with Ghana or integration into Ghana, the latter of which of course occurred, but with the Homeland Study Group contending that the wording was union, implying a federal structure. From this we can see that the group's ultimate goal was not true independence, although it's not clear autonomy within Ghana is enough either, with the full federalization of the Volta region, although still within Ghana, seemingly being the goal. Then, on May 5, 2019, Papavi and 9 other Homeland Study Group leaders were arrested again, accused of planning another declaration of independence for Western Togoland. 81 more were arrested 3 days later when they tried to protest against their leader's arrest. On July 8th, Papavi was flown to Accra to face charges for treason, but once again the charges were dropped. The Homeland Study Group had been accused by the Ghanaian authorities of stashing weapons, but Papavi insisted on the group's peaceful intentions. The other 90-plus members and leaders of the group were then released by the Ghanaian authorities. This essentially put an end to the Homeland Study Group's activities, and Papavi passed away on October 16, 2021. However, after the neutering of the Homeland Study Group in 2019, a new group emerged, potentially in response to an incident in August 2020. On August 3rd, 17 people in the Trans-Volta were prosecuted for speaking French, which of course is still the major language in Togo, and is seen as a threat by the English-speaking Ghana government. Some Ewe groups, however, took this prosecution as a type of persecution. On September 1st, 2020, the Western Togoland Restoration Front declared independence unilaterally. This was an unconnected movement and used different symbols, and also did not adhere to the Homeland Study Group's non-violent ethos. They seized control of armories and police stations across the month of September, including a gun shootout that injured a divisional police commander. Meanwhile, police staff were essentially being held as hostages unarmed. Ghana sent military and police security forces to the region, where the rebels had set up roadblocks. However, information coming out of the conflict was very minimal, and at the time when we discussed it, few details were known. It does not appear that the insurgents held the territory and were able to enforce their roadblocks, with security forces quickly retaking control of the key installations that had been seized by the rebels. The security forces also raided towns where they suspected the rebellion had collaborators, according to residents, shooting at least 5 people. However, despite the suffering of civilians, the Restoration Front did not relent on its attacks. On the 29th, the same day as the Ghana authorities arrested those involved with the original police station attacks, more separatists attacked a bus yard in the city of Ho, the former capital of British Togoland. 30 would be arrested in that exchange. On the 2nd of October, raids by the Ghana security forces led to the arrests of 60 more alleged separatists. The Ghana government also granted concessions, including an autonomous status for the town of Alavanyo. Arrests continued throughout October. Meanwhile, Papavi was condemning the violence, as did his Homeland Study Group. On the 9th of October, more roadblocks were set up. However, they again failed, and the separatists failed to hold the territory which they claimed. By the next day, the roadblocks had been cleared and more alleged separatists arrested. On the 13th of October, a social media video came out proclaiming the existence of the Western Togoland Dragons, claiming to be a fully trained army ready to invade. However, the umbrella group they claim to be a part of disavowed them, and it's unclear who they are, while no further activity has ever been seen from them. One of the many questions that still isn't answered over a year later. By November, Ghana was approaching a presidential election, and to end the chaos, they deployed the armed forces to the Volta region. This appears to have largely ended the rebellion. However, on February 4th, 2021, another brief roadblock attempt and police station attack was made by an unidentified group, this occurring just to the west of the Volta region. It resulted in the death of 1 Ghanaian policeman, but again, it's unclear if this had any connection to the Western Togoland rebellion the previous autumn. In April of 2021, 3 Ghana federal police officers were arrested and charged with holding separatist views about Western Togoland. However, it appears that no further violence has occurred in the region. Although the issue's quiet for now, it seems quite possible that it could bubble up again in the future. Though with the death of Papavi in October 2021, even his non-violent campaign appeared to take a hit in momentum. So for now, the issue is quiet, but if it pops up again, we'll make sure to cover it here on the channel. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share the video with others, and if you can, support on Patreon. Also, make sure to check out the project that all these videos are based off of at apoliticalworldmap.org. Thanks again for watching. I'm Alex. I am out.